Good morning, folks. I'm Tom McLaughlin from Lovell, Maine. I am a conservative, and my guest here is, well, I don't know if I'll call him a guest because he's become a regular. Mark Guerringue is not a conservative. It's hard to say exactly where he is, and he is a newspaper publisher. One of his newspapers carries my column, and we get together once a month and we argue and discuss, sometimes agree, often disagree about our perspectives on the goings-on, locally, statewide, nationally, internationally. Does that sum up what we do?
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad you came. And our producer has asked us to read these questions. We don't know what these are about. And here's question number 1. On February 11th, a BBC cameraman was attacked by a Trump supporter at a Trump rally in El Paso, Texas. The reporter working with the cameraman said, quote, "I have been spat at before. They hurl abuse at American colleagues in particular." American colleagues, other press people from America, I assume he means by that. Do you believe Trump's anti-media rhetoric, including referring to the media on multiple occasions as, quote, enemies of the people, unquote, contributes to actions such as the one illustrated in this question?
Good.
Want me to go for it?
Sure.
Do I think it contributes? Perhaps. Perhaps it does. Let's see. The BBC guy, now the BBC has acknowledged, maybe 5 to 8 years ago, yes, we do have a left-wing perspective here at the BBC, after decades of denying that they did. Others that he singles out, that Trump has singled out, CNN, fake news, and he'll say that often. And those and others I can't think in particular, other than CNN that he names, by name, that particular media outlet as being enemies of the people. And his famous duel with, I forget the guy's name, he banned him from the White House press corps for a while. He was a CNN guy.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name right
too.
now. And he, then he was reinstated. But is it? I think so. There probably is a fringe of people, at his rallies. I mean, they're gung-ho. I mean, they wait outside his rallies wherever he goes. I mean, there'll be a capacity in that venue, whatever it is. And then there's an overflow that's often several times the seating capacity, wherever he's speaking. So he has a rabid, perhaps that's not a good word to use, but he has a very enthusiastic following, and when he attacks the media, they respond to that, and I think it's part of his base. Media is seen that way by many who voted for Trump, who came out of the woodwork and surprised the political world. So, yeah, does it contribute? I don't think it can help but contribute. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, he not only calls CNN, but he famously calls the New York Times enemy of the people. And I think it's an insult. This is the president of fake media and left-wing journalists and right-wing and all that, but this is the president, which should represent a little bit of balance and reasonableness, and it's an insult to the First Amendment. The New York Times, and it's an insult to every journalist, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because someone is going to, because it does ferment, it gins up this, someone is going to take him to heart. And, and he's going to be responsible for it. And it was like the guy who they caught, the white nationalist terrorist, the Coast Guard guy, who has this plot to shoot Democrats and journalists. Well, and you noticed, before I get to that a little bit, and the thing is about Trump, is that this is the part I have to hand it to him. Like, he knows he's doing it just to gin up support in his base. Like, he knows that. He craves the New York Times. I mean, he sits down
Praise
with
them.
he
Coverage by them, you
yeah,
mean?
he has regular, not regular in terms like every couple months, interviews with the New York Times. There's one little story where he was having this long interview, I don't know where it was, in the White House someplace with some New York Times guy, and it was going over, and one of his aides came in and said, Mr. President, you get your schedule, whatever, and he says, look, you do not kick out the New York Times. Like he knows, like he plays the media, and that's what to me is the most dangerous part. Like he doesn't believe it. Like Trump doesn't believe it. He's doing it. He doesn't believe that the New York Times is the enemy of the people. He uses
He'll call it the failing New York Times.
He'll call it the failing. Yeah, the failing is okay. That's one thing. But when he says it's the enemy of the people, he is ginning up support in those rabid, worst case, most extreme right wingers, and he's doing it as a trick. He's doing it just for that reason. He knows that. He respects the New York Times. He wouldn't. Why would he give interviews with it? Why would he be interviewed by the New York Times if he didn't respect them?
Because it's real politic. They exist. They have influence, and he has to deal with them one way or another. And he plays good cop, bad cop, embodied in one guy. He does.
Well,
And I think
I'm giving him credit. I'm giving him credit. He knows how to push the buttons in the most extreme part of your party. He knows how to do that. He's a master of that. That's why he's president. And yeah, but having said that, I give him credit for that. He's a showman. But having said that, I do think it's dangerous. And like the guy,
dangerous because of the potential for
right,
violence
potential.
against reporters.
So out of the millions of reasonable conservatives, and out of the 100,000s of really extreme conservatives, there's there's a bunch of them there that's going to take the president at his word. It's the enemy of the people, just like that Coast Guard guy that they outed.
I wonder how they got on to him.
Well, I don't know, but the FBI is smart.
I haven't been able to discover
I don't know that, but we don't know. It's because one reason we don't know is because if that guy had been a Muslim or Hispanic, Trump would have been tweeting all day about it, and he didn't say a word about it. And so when that happens, when someone like that, if he takes out a bunch of Democrats or some journalists, there'll be a reckoning.
So a guy like him did attack a Jewish center. Was it a temple or a synagogue in northern Pennsylvania somewhere? I think Pittsburgh. Killed several Jews, and he seemed to fit that kind of profile of this guy. White supremacist and anti-Semitic. And can you think of any others who have actually perpetrated violence in that way?
Well, I think you look at again, this is going to your wheelhouse, but if you look at Muslims, you look at the religion of Islam and the most extreme parts of it, people who take some of the passages in the Quran literally, they're terrorists. I mean, any group is susceptible to that kind of influence, and the fact that our president is adding to that, I think, is not right, it's not healthy, and it's dangerous.
I saw something this morning in the Washington Examiner, which seems to have taken over from, it was owned by the same people who owned the Weekly Standard, which would be William Christo and people who used to be called, what were they called, Conservatives? Yes, right, all right. William Christo, he's an ethnic Jew. I don't know if he was a practicing Jew. And his father had been a conservative before him. So Weekly Standard died, but they also own the Washington Examiner, and some of the staff went over to them. So that's become like a second to the National Review, which would be, the flagship of print magazines on the conservative side. Anyway, Washington Examiner quoted a study, just today, I saw this morning, by Columbia Journalism Review, which among journalism schools, that is considered the highest, most prestigious and also one of the most left-wing journalism schools, said that 42% of the Democrats do not see mainstream media as biased. Only 10% of Republicans did not see mainstream media as biased. And then they compared, as an institution, several, like at the top was the military. People had the most confidence in the military. Second was, I forget who, but others were universities, academia, Congress, media. Media was second to last, just above Congress. And the executive department was just above media. Now, it surprised me that academia was in the middle somewhere. There are about 8 of them. I didn't have time to print it out because I saw it while I was eating breakfast and I had to get on the road, and so it didn't make it into my notes. But it reflected, I had something else too that...
What's your point?
My point is that people do not trust media. They simply don't. They see media as biased. And a majority, and an earlier study that I think came from Pew, here it is, 58% of Americans believe the media doesn't understand them. It's a poll, Pew Research Center. It was from January 18th. Nearly 3/4 of Republicans say the media, news media, don't understand people like them. Now, I had it as a link and I didn't go further. Most Democrats do think media understands people like them. So, also, 40% of Americans get most of their news from media. I mean, from television, from television. An equal number, 40%, also get it from social media. Now that
but the
kind of scares me.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess
That was from the Columbia Journalism
Right.
Review.
I don't want to cut you off. So I'm just trying to get to what your point is.
Yeah.
So what is your point? That people distrust the media?
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess my response to that is people always distrust the media. I mean, it's always been that way. I mean, there's never been a golden age of media. I mean, 100 years ago, I mean, you could say Walter Cronkite was the golden age of media when everybody listened to one person who filtered, it was that person's view that we all got our information from, and I'm not sure that's
50s,
particularly...
60s into the 70s.
But I'm not sure that's healthy or not. So I guess being in the media business myself, I just don't hold any illusions that there's any sort of, I mean, there's a golden age of newspapers and there's a golden age of the 3 networks in terms of a commercial application and an industry. But in terms of the actual news, I mean, it's an ebb and flow situation. I mean, in the 1800s, we had penny newspapers and every paper was a partisan vehicle for one party or the other. That's why we have the Coas County Democrat name of it, because that was the Democrats' newspaper, or the Republican, the Danbury Republican, or that's a history of journalism, and now we just have a lot more. And now we just have a lot more.
No pretense of bipartisanship.
Exactly, and so that kind of changed and all that, and there's a whole story. This whole story behind that, but now we have just a lot of information, and I think we do end up. I mean, the danger. One is that when you talk about social media, it's not like me sending you something on Facebook and you're taking my word. Newspapers, most of that social media stuff, it comes through social media, but it starts off in a media. It starts off somewhere.
You mean in establishment media?
Yeah, I mean, that's when they say, like newspapers, in the newspaper industry, I know this for a fact, is they say 80%, 70%, you say 40, I've heard 60 or 70% get their news from social media. That's because somebody will post something from someplace else, and they get it that way.
I don't say it. Columbia Journalism Review.
No, but I'm saying the definition of social media.
Oh.
I'm saying the definition isn't that, they just get it from, because you're saying something out in Lovell and I'm saying something down in North Conway. They get it from legitimate sources, but they get it. And it's sort of like saying, 60% of it's a medium. Social media is a medium. It's not a generator of news. Television is a medium, right? So the fact that it comes through social media isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the people spend so much time looking at that screen instead of the TV screen. They're just getting information through there instead of the TV.
It can be a bad thing when you look at what Google is doing with its searches, for example, in that it is ignoring certain keywords, not in rather the same way that the IRS would flag certain words when it was auditing organizations that were tax exempt. So media is doing that. Facebook is doing that. And those are the two biggest social media companies. And there has been some exposure of their practices, which they deny, or they'll say, well, we're addressing that, which is a kind of a tacit acknowledgement that there is a problem, at least on the Facebook side. So that concerns me in that they're monopolistic. There's also talk about trying to break that monopoly. I have mixed feelings about that. But now you're a newspaper guy, and were you involved in Berlin in the newspaper business before you came down this way?
No.
When you grew up, so you started down here in the newspaper business. But when you started it late 1980s, a print newspaper, it was just before internet became widespread and became major competition. Yeah. So you've had to deal with this change in how people are getting their news. And you've survived, and you expanded for a while, and I don't know if you're not expanding anymore because you don't want to, or because the business.
Because I'm too old.
I don't know. I don't really know what the reasons. I mean, but you started one newspaper, now you're up to 4, and it's been 4 for a while, and maybe you just don't want to get bigger than that. That's, that could be, or you just see that it's not a good place to invest anymore, and you're trying to survive this transition. Also, I noticed on your website, there's something about an award for having a website, or a good website, or online news is.
That we did?
Yeah.
Yeah, we won an award. Yeah, so I don't know where you're going with that either, but.
I mean, well, I want you to reflect on it. That is, I mean, what do you see the trend in the future being, and is it a good thing or not a good thing, or some both?
Well, it depends what pair of glasses you're looking at. From a consumer, I mean, obviously the internet is an incredible thing. I mean, there's so much more information available now than there was before. So how, as a journalist, how can I say that that's not a good thing? I mean, period, done. As a publisher, it's totally disruptive in the newspaper industry, and most newspapers won't be around in, you name it, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but at some point they're just going away.
Hard copy newspapers.
Hard copies newspapers, and that's another whole giant story, but in 2 sentences about that, 50% of it's the internet, 50% of it's corporate ownership. The newspapers that are going quicker are the ones that are being corporate owned, and they're being gobbled up because publishers like me aren't seeing a bright future and they're selling. And that's what happens. And that's what's happened. And an example, just very quickly, is in New Hampshire. The Mountaineer, the Berlin Reporter, the Granite State News, the Carroll County Independent, your viewers will know them as formerly very healthy papers. The Mountaineer doesn't even exist anymore. Well, 10 to 20 years ago, all those papers were bought up by a company called Salmon Press out of Massachusetts, Connecticut actually. And over those 10 to 15 years, they've just consolidated so that Berlin doesn't have an office, they don't have an editor, they don't have a salesperson. The Mountaineer went out of business. Carroll County, Ossipee, they used to have, people know Jack Burkhart from 20 years ago. They don't have an office anymore, they don't have an editor. And so they're staying ahead of the curve and cut for the bottom line. That's on that level. And then on the public companies, Gatehouse is a huge one. Gatehouse, they're from Boston area. They own hundreds of newspapers now, including Cape Cod Times, Providence Journal, a bunch of them around North Shore, South Shore. They own the Dover paper in Portsmouth, I've had people, they're cutting. They're doing all the digital stuff, but they're trying to stay ahead. They cut. They close their Dover office. I've had one developer 6 months ago contact me about starting a free paper in Dover because they're losing their local paper. So there's a lot of reasons for it, but the bottom line is newspapers are in big trouble. our newspapers, the free, it's a plug it's for us.
Go for it, yeah.
No, the free daily model is a good model because it's free, because we're not losing circulation. The thing we're not lacking is readers. I mean, internet has given us, we have, 500,000, we have, hundreds of thousands of page views a month on our website, and so we reach way more people than we ever did through digital, including, and the paper we don't print any fewer papers, but the advertising is what we supported on, and that's going away. It's going away not locally, it's going away nationally.
Advertising in the hard copy or advertising digitally?
Well, digitally, the problem with digital for anybody, any news organization, is it doesn't pay. It just doesn't pay, bottom line, unless you're the New York Times. So what I say about newspapers is the only newspapers that are going to survive in the future are the ones that have news nobody else has. So that's
why you like to emphasize local news, because
oh yeah.
you
So it's
monopolize
little
that.
guys like us and the top of the food chain, the New York Times, and whatever other, it doesn't matter whether they're conservative or not, but just you have to have news that nobody else has. And that's that, and we'll see what happens, but it's not.
So even with all these views, hundreds of thousands per month, page views,
Yeah.
you can't translate that into advertising dollars.
Not enough.
Not enough to sustain your
Right.
business model that you have now.
The term that newspaper people know is that we're trading dollars for dimes. What used to get us $1 now gets us a dime, and you can't support. We have eight journalists, people in our editorial department. And so I'm not, the Conway Daily Sun is healthy and is doing fine, and we're probably one of the healthiest newspapers in the country, frankly, But it's not getting any easier in paid newspapers because they're taking a hit on the advertising side and the readership circulation side, and they're having this corporate ownership. Most of them are. They're just going down the tubes.
So the people in our demographic, now,
Yeah.
aside from being
And they have the demographic
journalists and
challenge.
publishers and so forth, prefer that. I mean, we want to go like this, as opposed to looking at our computer.
but we're
and going
dying.
like this. We're dying is right. We're
I mean, and let's move on. Let's move
literally
on
and
because I don't want
figuratively
to.
we're dying.
But 20 years ago, there was 15 million. I might have even said this before. There was 15 million tons of newsprint consumed in North America. 15 million. Today there are 3.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yep. All right.
All right, move on.
What about Michael Cohen?
He's testifying.
Right
started
now.
testifying 35 minutes ago. What do you think about him? You brought him up.
I think Trump. I think this is a good one. I think Trump is in trouble, and
Okay.
will be trouble, and will be in big trouble today. I mean, we know he's going to talk about everything, and his past. We know Trump. He's a corrupt businessman, and he's brought that to the presidency. And one of the things he's going to talk about is the campaign finance violation, paying off Stormy Daniels. And I guess I would put that onto you, is that he's going to show up with a check that Donald Trump apparently wrote while he was president, $35,000 to pay off Stormy Daniels. So
We knew that.
no, but this is the proof.
Well, proof of as if it were in dispute.
Oh, so it's not. So,
I don't
well,
see
he
that it's in
denied it. I mean, Trump denied it. He denied having, at first he denied having a relationship with Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
Then he denied having anything to do with it,
Do with
with the payoff, the $130,000 payoff in October of 2016.
okay.
So I guess what I'm asking you is that if this is, most conservatives would say, look, it was Cohen, Trump had nothing to do with it, it was borrowed money, it was whatever the storyline they were saying.
Cohen paid for it, Trump reimbursed it.
Yeah.
I don't think that was ever in dispute, was it? I mean,
I think
maybe
so.
it was at the beginning, but if
Okay.
so, that's not. I mean, that's over a
Okay,
year
so
ago,
it's-
right?
so
I'm
if-
not going to.
So what do you think now? It's
I'm not
obviously
disputing it.
Okay,
Put it
so it's a
that way.
campaign. He broke the campaign finance law.
Well, that's in dispute.
Okay, so I mean it's in dispute because, and I don't have the language here. I didn't know. I didn't think you would dispute. I thought you would
we've
dispute
covered this ground before.
Well,
And
no,
I
but
quoted
this is
Alan Dershowitz, who said that it's not a campaign violation for him to pay off somebody
to help him win the election. That's not a campaign violation?
you could. Is it a campaign violation? For one thing, Dershowitz came at it this way. He said two ways. He said if he was a married man and an affair with another woman was exposed, he would try and silence that, and he would do so by paying some of his, he's a billionaire, so pay off this woman and come up with a non-disclosure agreement. So that's one aspect, so that's not illegal on its face. And so he could say, that is why I did it. Now, you can't, how can we know why he did it if that can be his defense? Then the second part of it is, there is no campaign limit for a candidate, limit on how much a candidate may spend of his own money in order to become elected. So those are the two ways that Dershowitz said this is a non-issue when it comes to violating the law.
I guess we're going to find out, because anything I've ever read about, except Alan Dershowitz, says that this is. I wish I brought in the definition of how that addresses that, because I've seen it and I just can't remember it. But to do something, to pay off somebody, to do something to pay somebody, to do something to affect the election like this, is absolutely in violation of that law, and that's impeachable. That's impeachable.
Okay, there are different views about that.
Okay,
now,
well,
how many times have I heard Democrats or people who hate Trump, and I would put you into that category, that say, okay, we got him now. He's not going to survive this one. I mean, dozens of times have we heard this? Perhaps dozens over the 2 years plus of his presidency. And excuse me, but I just don't get upset about it. And plus, Cohen is about to, from the hearing, will he go directly to jail or within a few weeks? I don't know. And for what? For lying to Congress under oath.
On behalf of President Trump.
Well, is that true? Did he lie under oath on? I don't actually remember the thing that he said that he was actually convicted of. So I don't know what it was. But okay, he's.
I hope you're
what
not
else has he got? I mean,
well, he's got one is that he lied. He's going to talk about Trump in 2016 planning, still negotiating for Trump.
His hotel,
because he didn't think he was going to win. So that's a big one. He's going to talk about, Michael Cohen's going to talk about how he knew about the DNC hacks through WikiLeaks. So he's going to talk about other women. He's going to talk about
other women besides the two porn stars.
Yeah. He's going to talk about his foundation, the money laundering in Panama, the money laundering in Saudi Arabia. I mean, his shell companies. I mean, it is going to be a free-for-all to go into Trump's background now, and because he's done so much stuff that's been illegal and tax evasion. Why doesn't he give up his tax returns? He never has. Of course not. So I guess I'm saying is that there's such a litany of things that will come out of this that's going to just as a starting point. Never mind the Russian stuff. I mean, that's just another whole story. But looking
or a non-story, depending on your perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to win the bet that when the Mueller report comes out, which could be next week after he comes back from meeting with the North Korean dictator, we can expect a Mueller report. And it looks like people are downplaying expectations. Those who were most rabid that Trump was colluding with the Russians to win the election are now saying, well, maybe we're not going to see too much there, and expectations.
Did you think Clinton should have been impeached?
Should Bill Clinton have been impeached? No, I don't.
You didn't support that when he was being impeached? Well, that was interesting.
I like to see those columns. I probably did.
I bet you did.
Yeah, I didn't
but I guess
like Bill Clinton.
I guess compared to Trump, he's like an angel.
I look at it. You asked me now. Did I at the time, 1998? I was probably cheering for Newt Gingrich and the Republicans and the majority in the Congress because I had soured on Clinton. I voted for him in '92. My last time I voted for a Democrat for president. And then I soured on him when I saw, what he had done, and it was right as my transition from left to right was accelerating, late 1990s. Looking back on it now, and the wiser person that I am, and older, and so forth, I don't think it was a good thing. I don't think I think the special prosecutor law it should be eliminated, because it's crippling for a president. It crippled him, and he did good stuff. He was a smart enough politician to work with Gingrich and the rest of the Republicans for the good of the United States, and he balanced the budget 3 years, and that is a huge thing. Right. So he was a master politician.
Yeah, and he was smart. That's the way you should govern. You should
that's
govern
how
a little
I look
bit.
At it now.
You should govern from the middle. And I will leave the Michael Cohen alone, but I guess there's some really juicy stuff. He's going to talk about how Trump, how Cohen had to bully the college where Trump went so they wouldn't release his records, high school records. He has that, he had said about, of course, he supposedly, even though he was an athlete in school, I guess, Trump was, that he had a bone spur so he couldn't go to Vietnam, which was there was never any record about that.
So Cohen is going to be testifying.
He's going to talk about all
these
those are the juicy stuff, because he has
Which committee is it?
I don't know. Is it a Senate committee?
No, House.
Oh, House committee? I don't know. It's Cummings is the one who's going to lead it, though.
Okay.
And he has a quote by Trump that says, "Go to Vietnam. What am I, stupid?" That'll sit well with all of it.
House Investigations Committee, Oversight, House Oversight.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
So that's what Trump said. He says, "Me go to Vietnam? What am I, stupid?" So that's kind of the juicy stuff that's coming out. And speaking of which, so that's going to be huge. I mean, this is going to be huge, and I really do think it's the beginning of the end for the criminal stuff. Not so much the Russian stuff, and that's another debate, but for the criminal stuff, because as we know, I mean, he's basically a criminal. I mean, with his bankruptcies and his tax.
You say we. I don't include me
his
in
tax.
that.
I mean, the New York Times did a great piece about how his father would run, scams through these through his businesses when he was younger and all that. You should read it. It's great. And speaking of Clinton, but one more thing. Speaking of Clinton and how he governed from the middle, right? Or he governed. He compromised.
I think he was a smart enough politician to realize that Hillary tried to get national health care in. It didn't work, and I'm going to pivot now to the center. I'm going to triangulate, I think was the word that he used, and he did. He was smart enough.
I mean, Robert Rubin, his secretary, Treasury secretary at the time, when Clinton was first elected, he wanted to do this $800 million typical Democratic infrastructure package.
When Clinton was first elected, he wanted to do that.
Yeah. And Robert Rubin, Wall Street guy, and I think it was Treasury secretary, he talked him out of it.
He was.
He says, "Don't do that. Don't do that. The deficit, da-da-da." And he didn't. And so it led to, there's one of the reasons why it led to, he just didn't squander the money. It led to the surplus that we had during the Clinton years. And so
later in the second term.
Once things got, the economy kind of turned around there. So, but he didn't do things like declare national emergencies. I mean, you think that's a dangerous thing? When you think it's a real national emergency with these Guatemalans coming up?
I do.
You honestly think it's a national emergency?
I do. Yes, I do. I mean, it has been for quite some time. And he wanted to build a wall, and he wasn't able to do it politically. I think he had expended too much political capital. He put it off too late in his particular package to actually build the wall. He might have been able to do it in his first term, early in his first term, but now the House went to the Democrats, and he was in the middle of negotiations to.
So why is it a national emergency now and not the first 2 years of his presidency?
Well, because I think he thought he could address it by.
But a national emergency is like, hey, we have an emergency, we have to do something. That's not like, oh, I think I can politically address it.
Well, it's not the same as a hurricane or an earthquake or that kind of national emergency, which most of them are.
Yeah,
no, it's not. This is a more of a political emergency. It's more. I mean, I think it's to use the word invasion of the United States, I think, is a legitimate use of the word. To say that if there are 1,000 to 2,000 people a day coming across the border whom we cannot identify, and those are the ones only the ones we know about. The ones we don't know about, We can't, it's an unknown unknown. But there are a lot of them here. And if we cannot control who is coming into the country, that is a serious emergency situation, yes. And if it looks as though nothing is going to be done politically in the future, and as the chief executive, he can call it a national emergency, and as commander-in-chief, he can engineer that.
Well,
I do think that is a legitimate thing.
What goes
yes.
around comes around. And that's the danger. That's why most mainstream Republicans don't want to do that. One, you can argue about the national emergency. We know that the border has gotten more and more under control for the last 10 years. Like the apprehension of illegals has gone down, 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 down. When Obama, unfortunately, he didn't use it. He didn't dare to talk about it, but his deportations were way up under the Obama years. So it's been, the border has been getting tighter and tighter. The fences have been built, miles have been built. It was what, 700 miles of wall that's been built so far? I mean, wall or fences or, I
some
think
kind
that's
of physical
what it is.
barrier,
So,
but if
yeah,
you were
it's
to look at those physical barriers, you would see that they're really not physical
Right,
barriers.
right.
I mean,
So-
they're just not. I mean, I could scale it myself even at 67 years old. So
You think the big drug, all the big drug loads are coming through on backs of like 12-year-old kids? They're coming through the ports of entry. I mean, all the enforcement agencies know that most of the drugs come through the ports of entry.
those are only the ones that are discovered. So of the drug smugglers who have been busted, they have been at ports of entry. That doesn't mean that's all all the drugs are coming that way.
No.
We don't know where else they may be
they
coming.
catch 'em- they
we
catch 'em
certainly
everywhere.
have no shortage of all kinds of drugs in the United States of all kinds. That the supply of that is increasing. So when you say that's you can't know that. All you can know is
All
that
I
this
know
is the way they've been
all
busted.
I know is what but they bust people on the border too, Tom.
They what?
They bust. You say where they got busted on the ports of entry. They catch people on the border all the time. They pick up illegals everywhere.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So they can determine. They're pretty smart. So the enforcement agency have determined by how they catch people running across the border versus how they catch people at the ports of entry, and they're coming in with tractor trailer loads.
When I went down there about 9 years ago, I just wanted to see what's happening. Just boots on the ground and check it out. They were under siege. They're absolutely under siege, and this was in Nogales. This is a major port of entry in southern Arizona, and it's so if you see this fence, and it's no higher than this ceiling, and it goes like this because the terrain is like that, and there are holes in it. You can see they've been patched. So somebody with a torch on the other side had burned a hole, and how many people got through it before on this side somebody used a welder and covered it again. And then so there's a dirt road, and it goes like this, and all these border patrol trucks, mostly pickup trucks, that are green with white stripes, and they have mesh over the windows. They have like chain link fence material over the windshield and the side windows. And so I walked. First, I had a rented Jeep, so I went up, and there's a group of 3 of them. They're parked, and they're talking, and one's on the radio, and they're waiting for orders. And I said, "Hi guys, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm looking around. This is dangerous. You shouldn't be here." I said, "Well, what's so dangerous about we're here? Well, the rock can fly over this wall at us, and you could get hit. You really shouldn't be here." I said, "Is that why you got these meshes over your?" He said, "Yeah, exactly." And then they got a call up, zip. Then all of them, they spin in their tires and go into another location where somebody was there. So then I wait around and I drive the other way, to the west, and I run into some more guys, and the same sort of thing. It's hectic, and this is at a port of entry, right? So then I went to the local McDonald's, and I wanted to go online. I had my computer with me because free Wi-Fi. Nobody spoke English. I couldn't even order because they didn't speak English. They're all in Spanish. This is in the United States, in Nogales. So then I go back out, and I see a guy, and he's in this. Now he can stand around and talk. And he was one of the guys I had seen earlier. And I said, boy, you guys are pretty busy here, aren't you? He said, yeah. He said, and we don't catch most of them. You know, we only catch some. You know, we're constantly, so you need more people, you're understaffed. Oh yeah, he said. And then I never should have done this, but I said, well, you know, I'm writing an article about this. Shut right up. I can't talk to you anymore. And he was from Maine. He was from Lisbon Falls, Maine. Lucky. I said, so, you know, talking about playing the who do you know game, and we had one in common and all that. Shut right down. No, we got to go to Tucson and talk to a, you know, public relations guy, which just would brush me off, you know. I'll be here at this, and just couldn't do it. So I had to drive back to Tucson. It's about a 40-mile drive. Completely shut down, because I wasn't just a citizen, I was a writer. I mean, it is a disaster down there. He said, we catch, I forget the statistics, I wrote them down, but 100,000, and we only catch 1 out of 3. I mean, we have a porous, we are not in control of our border.
Everybody agrees we should have a tight border. Everybody agrees we have a tight border. What the difference is that Trump said Mexico was going to pay for it, which was just a rallying call,
It was,
right?
yeah.
You know, so that's just a typical Trump lie, you know. And then I wouldn't even call it a lie. I guess you'd call it a campaign promise, but it was just a ridiculous thing.
Well,
And why people like you buy into it? And are you some of the people at the?
do I believe they're going to pay
Yeah.
for it? Not by writing a check, you know.
Oh,
as
you
one of
believe through the NAFTA way?
through the NAFTA
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
or by taxing
Well, that ain't happened.
money that's wired in.
But nothing's happened yet.
No, it hasn't.
No, okay, so that's done.
But it is
now, and then he's
possible.
got this wall thing, you know, which
But
is
neither have we built one, so, you know.
Huh?
We haven't built one yet
no,
either.
and he's talked about that. He says now he's saying his slogans are "finish the wall," not "build the wall," finish the wall. Like he's actually
Well, he is building something, but not a lot.
right. So it's just more. It's just more. You know, just garbage. It's just
What about-
garbage.
okay, so when he had that rally at which this BBC guy said he got assaulted, it was in El Paso, right?
I don't know.
It was his last rally, and he went to the border, and and then Beto O'Rourke, a
Yeah.
possible future
Oh, yeah, yeah.
opponent,
Right.
he had a rally nearby, and we
Right.
talked about it
Yeah.
at the last show,
Right.
didn't we? Yeah, I can't remember if it was you or Gino. Beto O'Rourke now wants to take down walls, because it's part of this idea among Democrat candidates who are trying to out-lefty each other that the wall is immoral, says Nancy Pelosi, this, you know, de facto leader of the party. The wall is immoral. So, okay, well, to build any more walls would be immoral. What about the ones that are already up? Are they immoral too? And so Beto has seized on that and saying, now we got to disassemble.
Hey, what happened to the?
So are they the open borders party? I would say yes. They pretend not to be, but O'Rourke is a chink in that armor, that rhetorical armor. The Democrats say, "Oh, we're for border security." Well, no, they're not.
Well,
they're
there's-
not for
there-
border
there-
security.
There are 20 people who are running, and I'm not going to defend Beto O'Rourke. I mean, Trump had a $25 billion. If he would have accepted the Dreamers, the Democrats were going to give him $25 billion. He had I forget the exact numbers, $1.9 billion for the wall in December, and he rejected it.
That would have been a good deal in
And then
hindsight.
and then he caved in at 1.3 or something. So, and where are we now is he going to shut the government down again? Why, with all this other stuff going on,
No,
I actually forget.
That's already passed.
So
that is the February.
that
deadline.
passed, and
Yeah. I mean, he capitulated.
oh, then he did. Oh, that's right. Then he
capitulated.
capitulated, and then he declared a national emergency. That's right.
Right,
I'm getting
exactly. Yeah.
I have to get it in order. But the danger, even if we disagree on the national emergency, which to me, he's using it as he didn't get his way. Like Bill Clinton, he didn't get his way. So it wasn't a national emergency 2 years ago, but now it is because I want to get that money, which is fine. So you can agree with that, but what I don't understand is what you don't think is, one, is usurping the power of the Congress. Because that's
see
a
that
troubling. They have the power of the purse, and he's usurping that. So that's hugely important in terms of our branches of government. And the thing is that I'd be worried about you is when Trump loses in 2020, the Democratic president is going to get in and say, national emergency, climate change, national
I see
emergency, whatever. So
Uh-huh.
that to me, just on this is. I would think you would at least agree not to support it for the political reasons, just for the institutional reasons.
I see it as as bending the rules of a strict reading of the Constitution, which as a conservative I favor the literal reading of the Constitution, and which is a limiting document, limiting government power. And so I see it as not as related to what Obama did when he said, okay, well, the Congress isn't giving me what I want, so I have a pen and I have a phone, and I'm going to issue executive orders to get done what I want to get done. It's like that.
Well, it's another level.
I don't
Executive.
think
I mean,
it's
all
another level
presidents.
at all.
All presidents have issued many, many executive orders for different things. That's the
But
first
now
step.
he's appropriating money which is supposed to originate in the House.
Congress.
All bills are
Yeah.
supposed to originate in the House, as the Constitution says, yes. And so he is circumventing that by spending. He's going to take money from somewhere,
Yeah.
and he's going to spend it on this after Congress said, no, we are not going to do that. So it's
a dangerous precedent. It's hugely dangerous precedent.
Okay.
I mean,
you could say-
I think you can agree with that. How can you not? I mean, how can you not agree with that?
Just like President Obama saying we're not going to enforce these laws on the border, we're going to allow people, after saying to himself 22 times as a former teacher of constitutional law that I know the Constitution doesn't allow me to do this, but now I'm all of a sudden going to do it. How is that any different from what Trump is doing now? It isn't worse.
It's appropriation, because it's the money appropriation part. I mean, I don't know how you can disagree with that. I mean, it just obviously is. He's usurping Congress, the House, where the money bills are supposed to start, and it's throwing off the balance of power. And I'm not even saying.
So Congress now has got a bill, which they'll pass in the House at least, and maybe even in the Senate, because some Republicans objected to this emergency declaration as well. And so it's going to go. It may reach his desk, at which point he'll veto it. But it looks like, counting the numbers now in the House, they're going to pass it not with a 2/3 majority.
Right.
So it looks like Trump's veto of their bill to prevent him from declaring an emergency or to let him spend money this way is going to. In that sense, he's using the system, and so is Congress using the system to try and stop him. But the Democrats and many Republicans pretend to be for border security, but are not.
Well, that's your own opinion. I'm not going to argue that, because
I mean, that's what we bring to the table here with us, isn't it?
Well, I know, but I mean, you're just making a blanket statement. I mean, for every Beto O'Rourke, I could tell you of all the other people who say they are.
You said that Obama had more deportations. You know what? I know how he got those numbers? By saying, okay, when the Border Patrol would apprehend somebody at the border, like those guys I saw doing, and then would send them right back, that wasn't called a deportation. But then when Obama came in, he changed the paperwork to call that a deportation. So his numbers went up. When actually, was he sending more illegal aliens from the United States back to Mexico than before? No, he wasn't. It was an accounting gimmick. We have a porous border. We're not in control of our southern border, and they want to come into the United States. Also, when they come in, even at a port of entry, they can just say, I need asylum. I'm seeking asylum.
Well, those are big issues, and it's not the Mexicans now. There are more Mexicans going back to Mexico than coming in, and the numbers show that.
I know that.
Okay, so there you go. So there's one thing. So it's the Central Americans, right? And that's the huge problem.
Yes, it is.
It is a huge problem.
It is a huge problem.
Right.
And how come how could you prevent that? By changing the law, this asylum law, and saying if you want to seek asylum, you do it from Tegucigalpa and not from Nogales, Arizona, or San Diego. You do it down there. It's a way of circumventing our legal immigration process, which is a joke.
Okay.
Why go through the process of legally
I know, you're getting
immigrating?
upset. Tom, you're getting upset about, I know immigrants is dear to your heart. So why don't we switch gears before you blow a cork?
I'm not blowing a cork.
Well, you're
I
getting
think I'm
upset.
making some pretty good points
No, you're
here.
not
and
making good
maybe
points.
you don't like the points I'm making. You can't refute them. So you're saying, oh, well, I'm blowing a cork.
We're overrun by immigrants and illegal immigrants in this country.
Yes, I would say we are.
Okay. Let's leave it there.
You concede.
It's a big problem, and we have to, at some point you have to address what's going on in Central America.
You
somehow.
go back to it then, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that somehow you do. But let's talk about North Korea. Did you watch?
Well, I
Trump?
wanted to change
Okay, go ahead.
change gears to something else. I want to talk about the Jussie Smollett situation, which got an awful lot of media, still is getting a lot of media. Now, this is a guy who claims to have been beaten up because
Right.
he's A, black, 2, gay, by guys wearing MAGA hats.
Right. So
saying,
this
is
everybody
MAGA
knows what
country."
it is. What's the point?
The point is, it's a fake hate crime.
Right, it was. I mean, it's
Okay.
nobody thinks it's a great thing. So you're gonna somehow. I'm just.
Here's the common denominator between that and the two other incidents, recent incidents I'm going to mention. And the other is the Covington boys, which has predated that. Those Covington high school kids who were wearing MAGA hats,
Yeah.
who were vilified in mainstream media. Just
Okay,
like
so what?
Jussie Smollett.
Okay, but
you don't
let's-
like where I'm going here,
No,
do you?
because it's just going to be another. You're going to go down these rabbit holes. You're going to pick and
Rabbit
choose
holes.
things to do. I just want to know what the point is. Just to bash the media?
MAGA hats. Yes,
So
part
that's
of
the
it
thing.
is bashing the media.
we've done
Part of it
the
is-
we've done the.
Now you're getting
one-
upset here. Maybe
No,
we
but
should
it's just
switch
a
gears.
waste of
You're
time.
getting really upset.
It's just a waste of time, Tom.
You just don't like what I'm saying.
No,
because
it's a waste of
it's
time.
True, and it doesn't. And it doesn't.
I'm not even saying not true, but why don't we talk about? I mean, it's just a waste
Okay,
of
how
time.
about this? There's a guy in Falmouth yesterday. Did you hear about him? He walked
No.
into a Falmouth, Massachusetts. He walked into a Mexican restaurant with two of his buddies, and he had a MAGA hat on. And he ordered from the menu. A woman at the bar said, "How can you let that guy into this Mexican restaurant wearing a MAGA hat?" And the bartender said, "Well, because this is America, and it's a free country, and you can wear a MAGA hat." She went over to him and knocked it off his head. And then he put it back on, and she did that 3 times. He told her, "Look, lady, back off, because you're a woman, and he's a man." And he just,
Right.
hey. He takes out his phone, and he starts to video what she
Right.
was doing. And she did it again and again. So then, let's see, then the bartender called the cops. So the cops show up. What's wrong here? I think it's a Bar Brawl. So the bartender points to the guy, and the guy says, "Here, look at the phone. Here's what she's been doing." The woman said, he shouldn't be in here wearing a MAGA hat and so forth. And then in front of the cops, she went over and knocked it off his head again. They arrested her. They weren't going to arrest her. They were just going to remove her from the bar until that point. Then they take her fingerprints as part of the arrest, send them to ICE. She's an illegal alien. She said, in the restaurant, she says, "I'm Mexican and you're offending me by wearing that hat." So now she's turned over to ICE. She's evidently going to be deported, but probably not because they bailed her. So she'll disappear back into some sanctuary city in Massachusetts. But it's just another incident involving a MAGA hat. Why were the Covington high school kids
Oh wait, let's go back to the MAGA hat.
were
again.
wearing a MAGA hat?
Right, but what's their point?
My point is that media and others
Where did you read about this?
vilify people wearing MAGA hats. Was it you when I had my MAGA hat here? I said, "I'm going to wear that down Congress Street and see what happens to me." Well, I haven't done it yet because it turned cold for that. It was a Friday night art walk. I was going to go do it. I still will.
Where did you read
in
about this
spring.
story in the Brunswick?
What story?
Well, the one you just talked about
In Falmouth, Mass?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the Howard Carr show last night. So witnesses that were in the bar.
Yeah, I would say I think you can blame Trump.
For that.
Yeah, I mean, just his tone and his rhetoric about the enemy of the people, about his rallies, and that people are just reacting to that. So he set a tone, an uncivil tone that I think you're going to find on both sides. I don't think that's acceptable behavior, Tom. You're not going to convince me that should
You got
happen.
5 minutes left? Holy smokes.
But I think you should look at what's happening to the civility of what's happening in our country and a lot of those things, and Trump is setting the tone.
And media is fanning the flames by doing what they did to those Covington high school boys because they were wearing MAGA hats, because they were Catholics, and because they were pro-life. 3 strikes against them with major media types, and the way they jumped
Didn't the
all
media-
over those
did-
guys, then they did reverse it, yes. But now
Yeah.
now
Okay.
lawsuits have been filed, and we'll see what
Did
happens
the
with
New
them.
York Times go after Elizabeth Warren?
Then we have there's
No, but you're just picking and choosing
and then
isolated
Jussie
incidents.
Smollett tries to
No,
do
that's-
this
but-
wearing by MAGA hats. It was
We
these
got 5 minutes
MAGA
to go.
guys, right?
Yeah, but I know, but you're just picking and choosing isolated incidences, and those are terrible
and the
things.
media championed him, unequivocally believing, not completely
But
hook, line, and sinker.
then it was mea culpa once they found out it was. In the liberal media saying, look, we jumped
Thank
to
goodness.
conclusion.
But how how much time separated the Covington High School boys from this Jussie Smollett incident? 3 weeks, maybe, right? I mean, two of
it's
them
you're
involving
bringing
MAGA
up
hats, and then this
isolated-
third one isolated.
Yeah, they're isolated incidences.
MAGA hats is the common denominator with all three of them.
Okay, then why don't you watch some of the Trump rallies and see if you think that's civil behavior, and then talk about that next show, okay?
Okay. Shall we do the number 2?
Sure.
We don't know what this is, folks. Of the Democrats who have announced their candidacy for the 2020 presidential election, which do you think is the most viable to defeat President Trump? So a list of candidates if needed. Do you need me to
No,
go through the
no,
list?
no.
Okay, who do you think could beat him?
I don't know. I think it's got to be, I know I only have 5 minutes or 2 minutes. I think Joe Biden apparently is going to get in the race.
Looks like it.
So I think he has a good shot. I mean, whether people think he's too old or not the right generation, I don't know. If it's not him, although I think anybody could pretty much beat Trump because he's not going to win the Midwest this time. But other than that, it's going to be someone with some dynamic personality. Like Harris. It's not going to be Elizabeth Warren. Nobody likes her. The fringe ones are too fringe. So it's going to be somebody like Harris or I guess I can't think who else. But
Do you think Harris is coming out for reparations for slaves, reparations for Indians,
Yeah, I don't
Medicare
know.
for
I don't know.
all,
That wasn't the
Green
question.
New Deal? You don't think those 4 things
Yeah,
are
we'll
going to
see.
be anchors, albatrosses on
Could
her?
be. You just asked me. So I'll ask
Well,
you. Who do
the
you
producer
think?
asked.
Yeah. So who do you think has a shot?
Whichever one is not encumbered by those stupid things. Now, maybe Amy Klobuchar, who has, soft-pedaled these things, who recognizes that the Democrat Party is moving drastically to the left and is worried about people like Ocasio-Cortez, who has all of the attention of media and left-wing Democrats who are desperate for her endorsement, and other people like her. They are going to lose the election to Trump. If people, to the extent that they champion those crazy, in my opinion, crazy ideas, they're going to lose because the American people are not there. Even though he may lose some of the Michigan and up that way where he unexpectedly won those electoral votes, I think that and abortion is another big issue that's come up since the Virginia debacle, and his infanticide bills and the bill that just died yesterday. I mean, as Nebraska Senator Ben Sass said, okay, so this is not about abortion. This is, the abortion field. We have a live baby right here. Are we going to give it medical care? Are we going to allow it to die? And most Democrats, all but 3 Democrat senators, voted against that. And if you listen to their reasons why they voted for it, to protect the women's health, we're talking about.
You're never going to convince me people are going to let babies die. Women don't let their babies die. Those are tragic situations, Tom. And to somehow conflate that to say that people are putting babies out on the table, let them die, I don't believe it.
Did you listen to Governor
I don't believe
Northam
it.
say that?
I don't believe it.
And he was a pediatrician. This is an issue. It's resurrecting. It never went away.
Well, who do you think is going to answer the question? What about Joe Biden?
Biden is a possibility. He might, but he shoots from the lip too, some, and it could hurt him. And I don't think he's got the base that Trump has. I think, and Tulsi Gabbard, she's an unknown, but she
Hildebrand?
could. I don't think Hildebrand, no, I don't think she's got a shot. Elizabeth Warren, no. Bernie Sanders, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cory Booker, no. Kamala Harris, not if she keeps endorsing the things that she's endorsing lately, no. Amy Klobuchar, maybe.
But aren't there just stories about her being just rough on her staff and that
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of stuff, you know?
I've seen those,
So,
yeah.
you know, everybody's going to have something, and it'll play out. But as you know, when the right went over the edge, when they're the 16, whatever they had number of nominees, I mean, the primary always appeals to the hardcore of the party.
Yeah.
So they're whatever, you know, it's going to seem very radical to you in particular, and to me. I don't want one of these very left people to be a nominee.
Okay.
But
we're
it'll
out
go
of
move
time.
to the
We're
center.
out of
Okay,
time.
Tom. Thanks.
Thank you for coming, and
Okay.
we got heated today, but you know, we're passionate about our positions, and that's a good thing. So I hope you come back in another month. It'll be, I think, March when you do come back. And,
Okay.
And folks, thank you very much. See you next time.